Reading an opening statement, this is to advise the general public that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled Senator Byron Bear Open Public Meeting Act, New Jersey Casino Control Commission on January 9th, 2025, filed with Secretary of State at the State House in Trenton a notice of this hearing. On January the 9th, 2025, copies were mailed to subscribers. The use of cell phones in the public meeting room is prohibited. Any member of the public who wishes to address the commission will be given the opportunity to do so before the commission adjourns for the day. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Welcome everyone who is joining us in person and remotely today. This is a special meeting with a very limited agenda. This meeting will, however, be streamed the same as our regular monthly meetings. The public is able to listen through access provided on the Commission's website, as well as through our YouTube channel. We will accept public comments via email. Public comments can be sent to public.comments@ccc.nj.gov beginning now. I will repeat that. Public comments can be sent to public.comments@ccc.nj.gov beginning now and any time throughout the meeting, ending at the time of adjournment. This meeting is being transcribed as well as recorded, and minutes will be available on our website in due course. To meeting participant callers, I ask that you follow the instructions provided with the web link or audio call-in code and place your phones on mute until your matter is called. Also, when your matter is called, please turn on your camera and identify yourself before speaking. Thank you.
Present.
Vice Chair Cooper. Present. And Chairman Pelosi.
Present.
The first item for consideration is the joint petition of Premier Entertainment AC LLC and Bally's Corporation for the temporary qualification of Joseph Mouse as Chief Financial Officer of Standard General LP pursuant to NJAC 13:69-2.7C. This matter was initiated by petition PRN 3442401 dated December 6, 2024, requesting the temporary qualification of Mr. Mouse to serve in the Chief Financial Officer capacity for Standard General. You have counsel for the division present as well as counsel for Mr. Mouse, and I ask that with your permission, they enter their appearances and address the commission directly.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. First of all, I do want to thank you for holding this special meeting today, especially on a cold Friday in January. It's very much appreciated. Lynn Kaufman, Cooper Levinson for Premier Entertainment, AC LLC, and Bally's Corporation.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Deputy Attorney General Jordan Hollander on behalf of the Division of Gaming Enforcement.
You don't have to enter your appearance on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one.
This is the next one. Unless you want to do this.
Okay.
Good morning again. As General Counsel Fontoura described, you have before you a petition for temporary qualification for Joseph Mouse as the CFO of Standard General. We ask that he be permitted to be temporarily qualified and perform his duties and assume the position before plenary qualification. This matter, his qualification has arisen because of the matter that we will be discussing next, which is a merger transaction involving Standard General. So I ask for his temporary qualification, and thank you.
Good morning. You have the division's response of no objection dated January 9, 2025. to the requested relief. The division has had an opportunity to review the draft resolution and has no objections. Thank you.
Are there any questions for council on this matter?
No. No.
Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the draft resolution and authorize Joseph Mels on a temporary basis and prior to his plenary qualification to assume the duties and exercise the powers as Chief Financial Officer of Standard General LP, subject to the conditions contained in NJSA 5:12-85.1 and NJAC 13:69C-2.7D.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Maldonado.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooper.
Yes.
And Chairman Pelosi.
Yes.
The second and last item for consideration is the joint petition of Premier Entertainment, AC LLC, and Bally's Corporation for qualification of certain entities pursuant to NJSA 5:12-85C and NJSA 5:12-85.1E. This matter was initiated by petition PRN 342405, dated December 9, 2024, seeking on behalf of casino licensee Premier Entertainment, AC LLC, and Bally's Corporation, pursuant to a merger agreement and commitment letter, the qualification of a number of entities or the continuing qualification of a number of entities. You have counsel for Premier and Bally's present, counsel for Apollo present, and the division counsel present. And with your permission again, I ask that they enter appearances and address the commission.
Lynn Kaufman, Cooper Levinson, appearing for Premier Entertainment, AC LLC, and Bally's Corporation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. William Downey with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck for Apollo Global Securities and Apollo Capital Management.
Good morning again, Chairman and Commissioners. Jordan Hollander, Deputy Attorney General on behalf of the Division of Gaming Enforcement.
Okay. Thank you. As stated, we are here today you are here today, thank you, in response to the request of Premier and Bally's Corporation for consideration of the qualification of certain entities in connection with the continuing casino licensing of Premier Entertainment, AC LLC. And I will sometimes be referring to that as Premier, and I sometimes will be referring to the entity as Bally's Atlantic City. As a preview to what I'm going to be speaking about in a minute, I thought that it would be helpful to break this down into several parts. I'd like to first do a brief summary of the current ownership structure of Premier Entertainment going upwards. Then I will be discussing the merger transaction. And then lastly, I will be discussing why we're here and why the entities are being qualified in connection with the merger transaction. We also have Marcus Glover, the Chief Financial Officer of Bally's Corporation and someone who is quite familiar with Atlantic City and last position there with Borgata. He will be appearing by Zoom and will also be speaking to some of this. So to start with the current structure. Currently, Premier Entertainment is directly owned by Bally's Management Group, LLC. Bally's Management Group, LLC is directly owned by Bally's Corporation. Both Bally's Management Group, LLC and Bally's Corporation are qualified as holding companies under the Act. It is a publicly traded corporation. The largest shareholder of that corporation currently is Standard RI. Standard RI is qualified as an entity qualifier and security holder under the Act. Standard RI is managed by Standard General LP, which is also qualified as a security holder under the Act. Standard General, it manages Standard RI funds, and I'm sure that I don't need to remind anybody, but I will, that Sue Kim, who is the chairman of Bally's Corporation, is the managing member and chief investment officer of Standard RI, as well as the CEO of Standard General. Sue Kim is currently a qualifier, and we are certainly asking for his qualification to be continued, as he's a significant part of this going forward transaction. Bally's Atlantic City is right now one of many casino property subsidiaries of Bally's Corporation. I'm not sure, and Marcus can correct me, we may have either 14 or 15 casino properties. And right now, they are, Bally's Corporation and Twin River, Bally's Management are holding companies of Premier. What I'm about to describe is going to bring some new entities into the Bally's Corporation fold, and that is when we get to the merger. So the way also I'd like to characterize this, as you will hear, Bally's is really bringing more family members into the fold. And you will hear, and as I have intimated regarding Standard RI and Standard General, that it's family. So let's talk about the merger. Right now, there is Queen Casino and Entertainment, Inc. It operates 4 casinos in 3 jurisdictions: Louisiana, Illinois, and Iowa. Queen Casino is not a subsidiary of Bally's Corporation. Queen Casino is in its own silo. However, Queen Casino is owned by funds that are managed by Standard General as well. It's just not the fund, the owner is not Standard RI, it's a different entity. It's called SGCQ Gaming. So currently, but it goes up to Standard General. So currently, there are 2 different silos, both going up to Standard General. Seeing an opportunity, and as Queen Casino is expanding, and as Bally's Corporation is expanding, and we have an ultimate same owner of at least part of the casino, a decision was made that Bally's would be better positioned to have a combination where they could benefit from geographic diversity and more customer engagement and better use of resources by combining Queen Casino and Bally's Corporation. Marcus will be addressing, because he is certainly much more knowledgeable and equipped, and kind of the A-team, he will be addressing that at greater length. But because of that reason, they decided that there should be a merger. Okay, well, how did that happen? How do you get Queen Casino and Bally's Corporation to combine, and what does that mean, and what does that change? Now, if you were following along, and I have been told that sometimes I might be a little difficult to follow, and if anybody is on the Zoom that knows me is probably rolling their eyes right now, but I wanted to focus on, okay, how did it get here? Well, we have Standard General as the ultimate manager of equity in both of these entities. So taking them from the different silos, Standard General made an offer to buy back the public shares of Bally's and to contribute its ownership in Queen, the separate entity, to contribute the ownership, all the assets in Queen, to Bally's Corporation, so that this Queen entity, instead of being in a separate silo, would now be like all of these other properties that are subsidiaries of Bally's Corporation. The shareholders of Queen approved this. A merger agreement was entered into. Special committee of Bally's Corporation convened to evaluate the fairness of the transaction, and it was recommended, and a special meeting of the Bally's shareholders was held on November 19th to vote on the proposal for Queen to exchange the stock for everybody, talk with my hands, for everybody, for that entity to come within the Bally's fold, and the shareholders granted approval. But, like, how will this actually happen? So, again, it might seem like I'm getting into the weeds, but when I talk about the entities all kind of relate to the qualifications that we're asking for today. So I want to go through on a high level the merger steps. So to frame it, and we have before you today, Epsilon Sub 1 and Epsilon Sub 2. These are new entities that were formed for corporate purposes to help effectuate the merger. It's a kind of a common corporate way to effectuate mergers. So they were formed. Now they're there. We have our existing structure. SGCQ is going to contribute all of its stock in Queen to Bally's. In exchange, they will receive back common stock of Bally's, and that's how SGCQ will end up having an ownership interest in Bally's. Right after that contribution, this Epsilon Sub 1 will be merged into Bally's, with Bally's as the surviving entity. And as a result of that, the shareholders of Bally's then are going to have a right to take cash consideration. Everybody that's not one of these entities that we're discussing today will have the ability to decide to take $18.25 a share in cash consideration in exchange for their Bally's stock, or they will have an option to keep stock in this new company, which is still Bally's, but it is different stock. There have been 2 election opportunities for shareholders. I mean, in the first election, it was approved by a majority. There is another election period that actually ends today at 5 p.m., and I'm happy to tell all of you I will not talk until 5 p.m., so you can get the end of the actual final numbers on that. So now, so that's how the merger will occur. Standard RI, which has been out there with 90% interest, will remain as a qualifier and as a security holder. There are other security holders, such as Noel Hayden, who's qualified, and then there's some management shares. They will remain, but this transaction will happen. Then, after this first merger of Epsilon 1, then there will be this Epsilon 2 entity will merge into Queen. So Epsilon 1 merges into Bally's, Epsilon 2 merges into Queen, and Queen will be the surviving entity. And through this transaction, and I believe you had a chart that you saw, there are some shareholders under 5%, like Fortress, for example, that will now become a shareholder of Bally's under 5%, and they're planning to keep that interest. So with that backdrop, that hopefully it was a little bit helpful, now I'm going to specifically talk about all the entities before you today. So I've already talked about SGCQ. They will end up owning 59% of Bally's Corporation. We are seeking qualification for them as a holding company. They have amended their formation document to reflect the required language under the Act for a holding company. Then we have before you today SG Parent. SG Parent was also formed to facilitate the merger and is a party to the merger agreement and some other documents. And for that reason, the division has deemed them to be an entity qualifier, and that's the reason. Now, I mentioned Epsilon Sub 1 and 2. They're entity qualifiers because they are part of the merger and integral into having this transaction occur. However, they are not going to be surviving, so their status as entity qualifiers will be being for a limited period of time. Then we have the oldies but goodies, all in the family, that Standard RI, which I mentioned, which will remain an entity qualifier. Standard General, which before was an entity qualifier, but now because it's not only managing 19%, it's also going to be managing 59%. They are being deemed a holding company, and we're requesting their qualification as a holding company, and their corporate formation documents have been amended as well. Sue Kim will be continuing as a natural person qualifier, and as I have just mentioned, or as we just heard the matter, Joseph Mouse was just granted temporary qualification for Standard General. Okay, I'm sure everybody's heard enough from me, so I am going to now turn it over to Marcus to give a little more non-legal and, more color to the transaction. And I believe he'll need to be sworn in. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I apologize. Maybe I should turn it over to Bill first. Okay, all right. All right.
Mr. Glover, you got to be sworn in. Darrell?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name for the record.
Marcus Glover.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Yeah.
Good to see you again, Chair.
Good to see you, Marcus.
Commissioners, it's been a few years since I've got a chance to be in New Jersey with you all. I apologize in advance. I'm in the South now, so my Southern lingo is probably picked up a little bit. Accent. Good to be with you all this morning. Lynn gave you all of the specifics on the transaction at hand. I'll talk a little bit more about the commercial side of things and why it makes sense. One of the key components was at the time, the price of the shares were pretty depressed. And I think this was a symbol of our chairman, Sue Kim, seeing, and having vision to see where the company is going, could go and is going, and doubling down in his investment and level of resource into the company, and saw an opportunity. And so for those who had a shared vision that were existing shareholders that wanted to continue along for the ride, they would have the option to roll over their shares into the new company, should this merger be approved. For those who had no interest, there was a very attractive premium added to the share price to give those folks a cash out option. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a report from my team this morning that would give a summation of where we are today, but we can get that back to you today as the window for the second opportunity closes this evening. But a little bit on the commercial side of why I think it makes sense. As Lynn stated earlier, we have 15 properties as part of Bally's today, and the Queen Company has 4 properties. 2 of those properties for the Queen Company sit in Baton Rouge. 1 is under development currently, 1 is active. And then they have a property just across the Mississippi River in East St. Louis, Illinois, literally just across the river in East St. Louis, Illinois. And then 1 that is currently it's under development to go from kind of a river-based or moat-based facility to a land-based facility in Marquette, Iowa. And as you will notice, none of those markets are markets that we operate within today. And in the spirit of creating a portfolio of properties where we can kind of have a geographic appeal to customer base, across the country, we saw those as an opportunity to strengthen the portfolio of Bally's. We view this opportunity truly as a merger. In many cases, the bigger company gets described as the acquirer. In this case, while we are the bigger company, we view that there's some practice and some process that Queen Company will bring to Bally's that we think can be very, very accretive to how we do things. And on the flip side of that, we believe that there's a lot of opportunity that Bally's, as a larger company, will bring benefit to the Queen Company and its practices. And so we truly view the new co as being the best of both worlds. We think that there's an opportunity to further spread the Bally's brand across those markets and leverage some of the synergies within the state of Louisiana, combined with our Shreveport operation. There's opportunity to cross-pollinate and cross-promote either customer and or practice between our Kansas City, Missouri property and our East St. Louis, or soon-to-be East St. Louis property. That's part of the Queen. And then there's opportunity to further strengthen the customer base through marketing practice and brand affiliation with the Marquette property. And so we view this as all in all beneficial to the consumers that are loyal Bally's patrons, as well as our employees that will now have opportunities to continue to grow their career in 4 new locations. And so I'll pause there and happy to take any questions you all may have.
Marcus, could I just ask you to talk a little about what you think, how you think that this will benefit, or, I don't want to ask a leading question, but I am. What do you think the impact of this would be on Atlantic City?
Well, whenever you add new properties, direct impact in terms of the day-to-day operations.
No, just the impact on generally customer and revenue and, any kind of.
I got it.
Okay.
Thanks. So let me start by saying a direct impact to the day-to-day operations. We'll continue to make sure we invest in Bally's and the people and try to make that property as viable and competitive as it can be. I think whenever you add new properties to a portfolio, you add customers to your company-wide database, it presents opportunities to migrate customers and cross-pollinate customers across your portfolio. And so we'll be able to introduce, customers that are part of that Baton Rouge operation today to an experience in Atlantic City should they decide to do so. For me, in my seat, I'm more interested in ensuring that we continue to build upon our operational kind of integrity and currency and making the property as competitive as it can be. And I think that there's some practice and process that we can definitely migrate into Bally's Atlantic City that will strengthen that property and continue to make it a very competitive offering as we, pair that up with appropriate capital investment as we move forward. And so to me, it's a win-win for all parties involved. And we'll continue to make sure that Atlantic City is very competitive as part of the Bally's overall portfolio.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Glover?
Yes, I do.
You have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Glover, thank you for being with us via Zoom. Good to see you. I do have a couple questions, and you've already given some of the information and some of the answers, but I would like a little bit more information. Regarding the words that we're hearing this morning, merger agreement, merger transaction, and Ms. Kaufman, you did an awesome job presentation of explaining the dynamics and everybody and all the parties and entities involved. I was going to ask you, but then Mr. Glover came on. So, Mr. Glover, the words merger agreement, if you would, could you just elaborate a little bit more, I'm going to say in basic layman terms, so to speak, what actually or what is a merger agreement? Just a little more basic, as I said, a little bit more of a basic explanation, and the benefits for that particular transaction.
Yeah, I will have to defer the merger, the kind of definition in legal terms. I'll leave that to Lynn to give kind of the why, we frame that as a merger and not an acquisition. From a commercial standpoint and just a business standpoint, one of the things as we began to do what diligence we could on the company, Queen Company, we came to realize that there was a lot of practices and process and, quite candidly, customer base where there was just not overlap. And so, in many cases, the acquirer, if there's an acquisition, the acquirer imposes kind of their will, their way, and how they do things on the target company. In this case, we think that there is a lot of reciprocity in the deal. And so there's a lot of example of things that they do, and they're led by a gentleman named Terry Downey, who's the CEO of the Queen Company, who has many, many years of experience from his time in Vegas with Stations Casinos, and many of the professionals that he has working with him on his team are very seasoned veterans that they know what they're doing. And so, in the spirit of truly, my definition of merger is, combining of kind of two entities. We are looking to combine the best of practices. And so this is not going to be Bally's kind of imposing, how we do things on the Queen Company. It's truly to say, when we peel back the layers, which process is best. And in some cases, we've identified some things that they do better than we do. Okay. And we want to make sure that we incorporate that into our fold. On the flip side, again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things that we are able to do simply, one, out of practice, but then there are some times where the strength of the size of our company allow us to be better than them. And so we truly want to leverage our strengths and bring that to bear on the Queen and make them better operations. And we want to do the same on them and then have that be multiplied across all of our properties. And we think there's real synergy value to be realized upon doing that.
Okay, thank you. That's,
On the issue of, calling it a merger transaction, and as Marcus referenced, it's not just an acquisition for all the reasons he said. It's also usually an acquisition would be Bally's Corporation is purchasing these casinos, but this is part of a larger transaction where through this merger agreement, the public shares held by the public of Bally's are being converted and are going to become, held by these entities managed by Standard General. So it's a transaction that's structured this way to also effectuate that, which is a large part or a part of the reason why Marcus is appropriately optimistic about everything that can happen and working together, because it's actually it's now Bally's has more of the same ownership it had before, but it have a majority of that ownership.
okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
one of the things I failed to mention earlier is, and I think Lynn may have touched on this a bit during her intro, is post-approval and transaction, Bally's, the surviving entity, Bally's will remain, I should say, an SEC registrant. We will still be subjected to all of the things that come with that, i.e. SOX, financial reporting. We will be, for all intents and purposes, still on an exchange. I'm not sure if we remain on the New York Stock Exchange or some other exchange, but we will still remain publicly traded. The float obviously will look different with ownership, but just wanted to make that point as well.
Okay, and one other question for Mr. Glover, and it's actually a little bit of a continuation of my previous question. And actually, Ms. Kaufman had just a moment ago had said, what impact would this merger have? To that piece, I'm going to take it just a little bit further. So we're talking about the impact, the future impact. With that, this merger, will that, I hope, well, I'm going to let you, let you answer. Will that change the commitment per se to ballot? I know we've got all the other properties and casinos, et cetera, but my concern, quite candidly, is will this merger change the commitment to Bally's Atlantic City? And I know we've talked about, the entities, et cetera. And a moment ago, Ms. Kaufman had just mentioned, you're optimistic, we're all optimistic. But looking at that word, optimistic, so I want to make sure where your commitment is to Atlantic City's Bally, and if you're able to, maybe some thoughts, projections regarding the future with this agreement and what's going to be going on.
I am not in a position to offer projections, just because of FD regs and kind of where things stand with that. So I can't personally get in trouble by doing that.
Okay.
But I will say, there is no change in our commitment to our property in Atlantic City. I think to date, and I think the arrangement predates my time with Bally's, but I think to date, we've spent $100 million on kind of renovating the property in some of the right places with, I know, room renovations. We've added a couple of restaurants. We think we've made some appropriate investments that will make Bally's an attractive option for those who come to Atlantic City. Our commitment to making sure that we have a very viable and competitive property in Atlantic City will remain. I think the merger actually strengthens our position in Atlantic City by bringing additional resource into the company, whether that be expertise, whether that be thought leadership in functions that currently may not be as strong in Bally's today, what have you. But bringing more resource into the company will not shift our desire to have a competitive offering in Atlantic City in any negative direction.
I just want to say thank you very, very much, because just what you said is what I wanted to hear. And again, you talked about, you just mentioned one thing in particular, recent expenditures. And I was very happy that you mentioned that, because that's such an important part to keep everything competitive. So I'm very glad that you mentioned that. You mentioned the people. Certainly, there's lots of benefits, as Ms. Kaufman detailed, as you continue to explain. So again, thank you for being here today. It's great to see you. And I'm very, very satisfied with what you presented. Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Molyneux?
Good morning, Mr. Glover.
Good morning.
Yes, Atlantic City Bally's is the elephant in the room. So, and I've heard what you said about the merger and how it will affect Atlantic City, because that is the elephant in the room. A lot of more attention needs to be done with AC Bally's and AC. So I'm going to ask you to elaborate a little more on how that will affect Atlantic City. Also, I'm going to ask you to, Lynn.
I will go first. I want to say, I think Marcus very clearly explained that, just in short terms, this is not going to negatively affect Bally's Atlantic City. It is only could only have a positive effect. Also, I just do want to say for the record that, as you know, this is a meeting discussing the qualification of these new entities. This is not it's not a license hearing. Of course, we are happy to answer questions, and we have good answers to these questions. And, since I have the opportunity, I mean, I do want to reiterate, obviously, licensing conditions were imposed on Bally's to, put in $100 million to the property. That was done ahead of time. There were projects that were completed, high-end projects that weren't anticipated, and Bally's is really proud of everything that they've done to change the look and the mindset of that property. They're continuing to try and see what works in this difficult market, but they have shown, continued commitment, and they will show continued commitment, and there's, no reason to think that they won't. And this, I believe this is just right. Now we have more resources to, brainstorm and use, more people's expertise. And so, I think this is, I'm taking this opportunity to highlight everything, Bally's has done. We've brought in new people, new player development people. Bally's Corporation is extremely committed. And also, I mean, beyond the fact they do have a licensing condition that, Bally's Corporation needs to continue to support Bally's Atlantic City, so we don't need to have any worry there. But it's way more than that. It's that they have shown commitment, and, I believe when they tell me they will continue to show commitment. And I just heard today on my way in, probably an old expression that other people heard, but so it was apropos for kind of what this line of questioning is, that, like, we're looking at the donut and not the whole. And we've put the property looks a lot different, and we're going to continue to, obviously, continue to support Bally's Atlantic City.
Yeah, if I can offer, Commissioner, just a little bit on what Lynn said. So if I can, just to give a little context, beginning the year 2024, right at the top of the year, as we, if you recall, you can see, I think the property experienced slight profitability in 2023. And just to start the top of the new year of 24, we got word that an entire, what we call relationship marketing, that typically takes care of your property VIPs and other specialty groups that drive a lot of property revenues, they were poached, and they joined another casino in the market. And typically what happens with that is, business migrates with those relationships. Not making any excuses by any means. The property worked hard to reposition itself throughout of all 2024, hired an entirely new relationship marketing team, and has begun building and nurturing those relationships such that we hope to start seeing some harvest here in 25. I say that to say, we'll, no different than any other operator, you continue to evaluate your offering mix to make sure that you have something that satisfies a little bit of every customer segment that comes in. And then you rely on your marketing and your relationship team and host team and every other tool you have in your belt to attract people to your property. None of that will change. If anything, we hope that gets better now that we'll have some traction and sustainability with the team that we've had added in 24. And so we'll continue to make sure that we put our best foot forward in marketing the property, putting the right resources in the right place. I think we have a very competitive hotel product now. And so we'll continue to make sure that we do right by Bally's Atlantic City. I can't project forward on what we're going to do and how we're going to invest. Not in a position to do that today, but I think the $100 million commitment was a great start because it got us a great hotel product in our main tower. And we'll continue to evaluate what offerings, if any, strengthen our profile to customers that come to Atlantic City.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Glover, are all 14 properties going to be called Bally's? Is that the marketing avenue you guys are going on?
Well, today we have 15, of which I think 14 are Bally's. One, if you're familiar with the Hard Rock in Biloxi, that's the one property that operates outside of the Bally's name. That was an acquired property that came with the Hard Rock brand, and we think that that Hard Rock brand has some stickiness in the Biloxi market. And so right now, that property remains a Hard Rock, not a Bally's. But the idea, we haven't discussed what makes sense for the Queen properties yet, to be candid with you, Chairman. So we haven't discussed that yet.
You had mentioned about cross-pollination of customers. Just for my edification, what market do you think would want to come to Atlantic City or out of those properties, you know?
Well, look, I can speak firsthand as someone who operated in Atlantic City. I think there's quite a few reasons. You know, and I'm probably getting on my Atlantic City soapbox a little bit here, if you'll allow me to.
We want you to come back. That's what we want. No.
Look, I lived in that area for 4 years. I raised my kids there for 4 significant years of their life. And you know, the one thing I've always told, and I would get on, and I forget the name of the authority, but they ran the tollways and the airport. And I would always say, you know, I thought, and Chairman, you might even heard me speak at the annual chamber meeting about this, that there was great opportunity to strengthen the Atlantic City Airport to bring people in. Because look, if we're just being candid, as the proliferation of the industry grows, just the idea of Atlantic City being a drive-in market was going to need to be aided by other forms of transportation into the market. So I think there's great opportunity to bring people in via flight from any of our markets, especially during the summer season when the beaches are, you know, some of the best experiences you can have. And so, look, we operate in Rhode Island, which is right up the road. There's a great opportunity to leverage that market and bring them down to Atlantic City. And there's not just beaches. I use that as the key anchor, you know, just because it firsthand comes to mind. But Chicago gets very, very cold in Chicago during the winter months. Easy to convince people to take a trip. And, you know, typically when you do those things, you package and bundle the experience so that the casino, in many cases, becomes secondary and in some cases tertiary to the experience, right? People that you convince to take these trips, they enjoy a casino experience, but they want to have the trip filled with other experiences. And so you package that. So beach could be a component of that. You know, Cape May, you know, taking a trip down to Cape May while here in Atlantic City for a couple hours could be a component of that. But you have to package and bundle those experiences to make it attractive for someone to want to come. But there's several reasons and opportunity to convince people from other markets to come. And I would say from any market.
Thank you. I'm glad you still have a soft spot for Atlantic City in your heart. That's all I have.
Yeah.
You have
No
follow-ups?
soft spot. That's real. I've always felt like it was, the area was undersold, in my opinion.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
I just wanted to, it's not really a question, but I just wanted more of a confirmation or acknowledgement to Ms. Kaufman and Mr. Glover, just acknowledging that today is a special meeting for the discussion of this merger transaction agreement. Just after hearing Ms. Kaufman and Mr. Glover, I just once again wanted to confirm that I feel very comfortable with what was presented. Your explanations for a very complicated process transaction, I feel very comfortable with what's been presented, as I said, by Ms. Kaufman, by Mr. Glover. And I suppose the key concern, or my concern, was, as I mentioned earlier, the commitment to Atlantic City. Not that the other jurisdictions and areas aren't important, but certainly my concern about the commitment to Atlantic City and what you've presented and explained. I'm very comfortable with what I've heard today. And just to Mr. Glover, I had earlier asked you about what do you project for the future, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot because, as you clearly said, certain things you're not, shall we say, at liberty, or it's not in your purview. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It was just sort of like an additional extension to the question. So I just wanted to make that clarification. But again, Ms. Kaufman, Mr. Glover, thank you so much. Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Marcus.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Molyneux, Commissioner Cooper. I just want to start by thanking you again, reiterating Ms. Kaufman's thanks for coming in today on a special meeting basis. I also want to extend those thanks to the division for their work in getting us here today. Just very briefly, I'm here today on behalf of Apollo Global Securities and Apollo Capital Management, who are both seeking your blessing as qualified financial sources for Premier in connection with the transaction that you've been describing this morning. We've had an opportunity to review the materials prepared by the division, as well as the draft resolution prepared by your team. To the extent that they constitute summaries of statements of fact regarding my clients, we are completely on board with those summaries, and we would also join in the recommendation and request that you adopt the recommendation of the division, finding both of the Apollo entities qualified as financial sources. Prepared for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Division?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning again, Chairman and Commissioners. Jordan Hollander on behalf of the Division of Gaming Enforcement. As set forth in detail by counsel and by Mr. Glover, we are here today to address certain qualification matters arising from the merger transaction involving Bally's Corporation, which is, as you know, a qualified holding company of casino licensee Premier Entertainment AC LLC, which owns and operates Bally's Atlantic City. As set forth in detail, in connection with the merger, several entities have been identified as requiring qualification under the Casino Control Act by the Commission, including SGCQ Gaming LLC as a new holding company of Premier, SG Parent LLC, Epsilon Sub 1 Inc., and Epsilon Sub 2 as new entity qualifiers of Premier, and Standard General, which is a current qualified entity qualifier, has now been designated as a company requiring qualification as a holding company of Premier in connection and as a result of the merger transaction. The requisite filings were made with the division, and the division conducted an investigation into the qualifications of each of those entities for those designations, as mentioned, pursuant to the Casino Control Act and the regulations promulgated thereunder. On January 9th, 2025, following the division's investigation, the division submitted a report to the commission summarizing the findings and results of its investigation. And as set forth in more detail in that report, the division does not object to the commission finding that Bally's Corporation remains qualified as a holding company of Premier, Standard General and SGCQ Gaming qualified as holding companies of Premier, that Standard RI remains qualified as an entity qualifier and security holder of Premier, and that SG Parent, Epsilon Sub 1, and Epsilon Sub 2 are qualified as entity qualifiers of Premier. Moreover, in connection with the financing of the merger, Apollo Global Securities LLC and Apollo Capital Management LP require qualification as financial sources pursuant to the Casino Control Act and the regulations promulgated thereunder. Both Apollo entities filed the requisite financial source information with the division, and the division conducted an investigation into the qualification of these entities. On January 9th, 2025, the division filed a report summarizing the results of its investigation into the Apollo entities. And as set forth in more detail in that report, the division recommends that the commission find both the Apollo entities qualified as financial sources of Premier. In addition, the division has reviewed the draft resolution that was circulated in this matter and has no objections. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for counsel?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the draft resolution and A, find that Bally's Corporation remains qualified as a holding company of casino licensee Premier Entertainment AC LLC, and B, find that Standard General LP and SGCQ Gaming LLC are qualified as holding companies of casino licensee Premier Entertainment AC LLC, and C, find that Standard RI Limited remains qualified as a security holder and entity qualifier of Premier Entertainment AC LLC, and D, find that SG Parent LLC, Epsilon Sub 1 Inc., and Epsilon Sub 2 Inc. are qualified as entity qualifiers of Premier Entertainment AC, LLC. And E, find that Apollo Global Securities, LLC, and Apollo Capital Management, LP, are qualified as financial sources of Premier Entertainment, AC, LLC. And F, that Soo Young Kim remains qualified as Chairman of the Board of Bally's Corporation, a managing member and Chief Investment Officer of Standard RI Ltd. and Chief Executive Officer of Standard General LP, all subject to the finding and rulings and conditions as set forth in the final resolution.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No.
No.
Hearing none, roll call vote?
Commissioner Malo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooper,
Yes.
and Chairman Pelosi.
Yes.
Thank you. I also do want to jump in before you turn the Zoom off, that I feel like the spouse that forgot to thank the spouse when they win some big award. I thanked you, but I did not thank Fauntleroy for working with us to get this done, and also the division who has, from the director on down, have casino license section. Many people have been working for months to get this done so that we could effectuate the merger, and it was not unnoticed and very appreciated. So thank you all.
Thank you, you're welcome.
In accordance with Resolution 24-121103, the next closed session shall be held on Wednesday, February 12, 2025, regular order, at 9 a.m. in the Commission offices.
This is the public participation portion of the meeting. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Ms. Fauntleroy, do we have any emails?
Mr. Chairman, I have been advised that we do not have any email comments.
The public participation portion of the meeting is now closed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, meeting adjourned.